Group 26. Alexa.
Mike.
Aaron.
Avery.
The 1970s was a time of diversity and change in America. Many things happened politically in the 1970s. Many of our leaders shaped how we see politics today, whether in a good or bad way. Richard Nixon was elected as our president in 1968. He was a conservative Republican. He is credited with starting the Environmental Protection Agency, and he visited China and the USSR in 1972 to help ease the tensions of the Cold War. In 1974, he was caught in a scandal known as the Watergate scandal, and he resigned from office later that year. Gerald Ford was Nixon's vice president. He took his place when he resigned. He granted a pardon to Nixon and amnesty to Vietnam draft dodgers, which made his approval by the American people go down. In 1976, after Ford completed his term, he lost the election to Jimmy Carter. He was known as a less formal president and more in touch with the American public. He focused on stimulating the American economy. His policy helped reduce unemployment in the U.S. The economy of the United States was in bad shape in the 1970s. In the 1970s, unemployment rose, and at the same time, inflation rose. In 1970, 9.7 million people were on welfare. In the late 1970s, the U.S. suffered through an energy crisis. The prices of imported oil rose excessively. Many gas stations were forced to close or to reduce their hours to stay in business. Alternative sources of energy, most notably nuclear energy, were tested and tried. The culture of the 1970s brought new things to American culture in addition to continuing the legacy of previous decades. In the 1970s, there was a new form of entertainment for younger Americans, disco. Disco was a distinct style of dance and music. It brought about new fashions and hairstyles and shaped pop culture of the era. The 70s also marked the end of the baby boomer period. Asian and Latin Americans began to immigrate to America. Migration to the West in search of suburban lifestyle and warmer climate caused the population to grow in the West. The 1970s also brought increased concern for the environment. In 1970, cities across the country organized an Earth Day in their city. Later that decade, it was made an official holiday in the U.S. by President Nixon. In 1979, a nuclear reactor at 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania, had a partial meltdown, which led to demonstrations and increased environmental concern and awareness. In the 1970s, the civil rights movement was starting to see change. To make up for years of discrimination, many companies practiced affirmative action, which was where they gave favor to blacks over whites. There was also a civil rights movement led by Native Americans. The American Indian movement was started. They encouraged pride in the Native heritage. They also helped several tribes in court with claims against the government for past treaties that had been broken. Overall, the 1970s was a major change in America in many ways.